Hey y'all, hope you're doing well today. So in today's message, I want to share some thoughts with you about deception. And so themes that we're going to explore also include freedom as opposed to the opposite, which is bondage, being in bondage, and how that relates into the overarching theme of deception and how this plays out in our life, especially when we have been ensnared by a controlling, manipulative person, right? Or group or organization or whatever it is. For that season in our life, trying to make sense of it, trying to do some self-reflection, trying to expand our mind to see the bigger picture, and ultimately to bring us clarity and some comfort and peace, right? So I hope you're doing well today. I hope that the message is beneficial for you in some way, and I just thank you for being here. So we're going to go ahead and open up with a saying that I was first made aware of when I was a kid. My parents moved into this older house, and there was a poster that was put up in the laundry room, and it had geese flying. It was a really beautiful poster. I don't know, I'm going to date myself here, but that's okay. So back in the 80s and even the early 90s, it was popular for posters to be a thing, especially like in school, in the classrooms and hallways, but also, just even in our own bedrooms as kids and stuff like that, right? But in school, you would find the motivational posters, right? And it was typically like this photograph, a nature type photograph with the words, plastered on top, sort of like the actual literal physical first version of a meme, right? And so I think I'm using that right, but the kind of stuff that we share all the time now that's digital, it's like that combination of your imagery and your words. And so that was just so popular back then. And so there was this poster like that hanging up in the laundry room, and it always stuck in my mind. And as a kid, it's sort of like, you kind of get the gist of it, but it takes a little while for you to work it out in your mind. And so, but the phrase was this, long story short, right? If you love something, set it free. If it comes back to you, it is yours. If it doesn't, it never was. And so that just kind of always stuck with me. And I've always had a great interest in the theme of freedom anyways, and independence, and so I was born close to Independence Day, and so it's kind of always just been a thing for me to have an interest in that concept on all levels, And what's so interesting is, regardless of how much you're focused on something like that, like freedom, you can be so, I would say, literally brainwashed, manipulated to the degree that you're not catching things. Your intuition's not in gear. It's not kicked in gear for you to catch things, right? You can be so enmeshed in or captured in deception and by deception within your own mind that you think you're free and you're not. And so it's just, there's so many layers to this. And in a perfect world, it would just be crystal clear, but that's not reality, right? So we have to work at it, and but it's rewarding and worth it. So let me start by sharing my notes. When trying to comprehend evil, okay, or whatever you want to call this negative force that is at work in our reality, right? We can't deny it. Then we can reference the number one way it's defined in the Bible, and it's related to a lot of things. It can be framed in a lot of different ways, but primarily it can be present. Well, let's say this: it can be present without being easily observable, right? Because its primary quality is spiritual, you might say, and psychological, depending on your lens and your beliefs, right? But I would call it this, okay? It's an essence, right? It's an essence. Whether you want to call it spiritual, psychological, or a blend or whatever, that's, for you to decide, right? But I think we can probably all agree on the fact that that this negative force that is at work in our reality, we can sum it up by saying it's an essence, right? So it's elusive, but yet it affects us all, okay? And what is this essence? It's deception. It's deception. So let's break this word down. So DE means from, okay? And then you have CEP, C-E-P, which is from capire, which is to take. And then the Proto-Indo-European root, which is cap, K-A-P, which means to grasp. So essentially it means to take from. Remember that, you have DE, which is the beginning of the word deception, which is from, and then the latter part means to take. But it's, when you want to break down the root, pieces and parts, you have to reverse them. So you have to take from. So how many times have we actually, when we're, just kind of doing a deep dive in our mind on concepts, when you're especially thinking about lies and deception, I'm just asking you because I'm asking myself, and it's like, I have never framed it in the way that it's broken down here through the roots, that it literally equates to take from, right? To deceive, if I'm just going to put it in my dictionary, I would have just said, well, it just means to not be honest, to lie, to fabricate, to tell someone an untruth, you might say. But to take from, I mean, that is essentially theft, is it not? So that's important, and I don't think this is something we should brush over, okay? In order to be able to identify deception in our life, we need to understand it as much as possible. So, when you break down the root, you understand that deception is theft, okay? It's a form of theft. And because we didn't know this, right? It's like we're diminishing its power over us unknowingly. And the reason this happens, it's not our fault. It's because our language over the course of time has been flipped upside down and reversed and flipped backwards, and we don't know this. We don't understand how impactful words really are, our language is, with regards to our thoughts and our associations, our mental connections between a word and then the concept that's related to that. When we're forming our analysis, our discernment, as our mind is working, trying to make sense of things in our reality, it's like it's always a miss, right? So it's important. Again, we're not able to identify deception because we didn't know to connect it with theft. Now, I want to bring the concept of our intuition into this now. I've mentioned this song before. It's great. I think he's a great musical artist anyway. And that's John Mayer. He's got a song called Something's Missing. And what is missing? What is missing that, and what we're talking about? It's a missing link, okay? Because when you are in the middle of a deceptive experience in your life, you feel like something's off, don't you? It's like you feel like there is something missing. You have this intuitive radar, going off, pinging, saying, like, you feel like something has been stolen from you, but you don't know what, and you don't know why, and you can't pinpoint it. And the only thing you have to work with is this mental construct in your mind that is made up of language that has been riddled with error over time and corrupted. You see what I'm saying? You see how this works? And so it's not our fault. And it's kind of like we feel this impact of theft at this intuitive or gut level or soul level, okay? And here's how we feel it. Instead of me just talking what sounds like fluff, let's get down to the logical, right? It's like, what's gone, right? if you really sit down and think about it, all you can really come up with is, well, I'm not happy anymore. I don't know why. I feel like I should be. It makes you just blame yourself. It turns into this, this situation where you start, judging yourself like, I should be thankful or grateful, but I'm not, and you don't know why. See? So it's like you feel like your contentment is gone, or your happiness, your joy, your sanity, your peace, your trust in yourself. You're always second guessing yourself, your own judgment. And why is all this important? Because all these things I'm talking about are the things that are provided by our inner guiding light when the connection to it is healthy. See? So instead, because we can't connect these puzzle pieces, it's like we get stuck in confusion, and we're just like desperate for this jolt of clarity. It's like just this, we sink into despair, and we almost get to the point where it's like, in regards to our life force, energetically, it's like we're kind of giving up, and that's a hard place to be in. And I can say that because I understand. It's kind of like you just reach a point where you try and you try and you try and you try, and then ultimately what happens? You surrender. Now, surrender can be done in different ways. And this is where, it's very personal, and it's a very delicate situation. But, in a perfect world, you might say, the surrender would be not a physical one, but a spiritual one. Okay? And so we're going to go deeper into this. Now, let's look at the term to deceive. We've already looked at the roots. Okay, so let's just take a look at the definition here. And I pulled everything that I'm going to talk about and share with you today from the online etymology dictionary, and I'll share the link down in the description. But to deceive means to mislead by false, this is interesting, to mislead by false appearance or statement. How many times do we just totally associate deception and lies with verbal? But it's not only statements, but appearance as well. And that's where it's kind of like, oh yeah, this totally makes sense with regards to covert, what they call covert narcissism, or, any type of covert manipulation, however you want to label it, right? Or frame it. Whatever words you want to use here. Yes, to mislead by false appearance or statement, okay? And then the Latin decepere means, and this is important if you're taking notes here. There's 4 things to jot down because we're going to look at them, okay? So the Latin decepere, D-E-C-I-P-E-R-E, means to ensnare, take in, beguile, or cheat, and or cheat. So, this essence of deception essentially includes those 4 things. Let's translate that. To ensnare means there's a trap. We become trapped. To cheat, if someone is deceiving, right? They're doing that to benefit themselves, for their own personal win and gain and benefit. That essentially equates to manipulation. Okay, that's a part of this essence, defining this essence of deception. Okay, it creates a trap for us. We get they cheat, which creates manipulation, right? There's theft, which we pull from the root words that make up the term deception. And then to beguile means to amuse. And I looked up amuse, which means to delude by artifice, to divert the attention or distract. Now, why? To throw you off of your course or your path, which means to successfully intercept your purpose, and for this manipulator to benefit selfishly in some way. Okay, so there's these 2 outcomes which can be manifest in multiple ways. All right, so let's remember, as part of our discernment that we consciously put on every day as part of our armor, our protection, our spiritual armor, let's remember this. If someone, and when I say someone, I mean like a person, a group, an organization, a job, whatever, it can be plural, okay? If someone's presence or your engagement with them doesn't produce fruit, or produces rotten or immoral or corrupt fruit, then you have been diverted away or distracted from your purpose. And this right here in itself is something that we can take in our time alone and we can expand on. You know, like, what is rotten fruit? What is corrupt fruit? It's not always, you know, clear in regards of, you know, being able to identify actual corruption in your involvement with someone. If you're a law-abiding, you know, citizen, and you feel like you know, you have this inner moral compass, and you're not, you know, consciously doing anything wrong, then you're not going to be able to say, well, here's corruption here and here and here. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, I just encourage you to expand on these concepts and you know, how they can actually manifest in real life examples, which is going to be different for each one of us. But essentially, you're looking at the fruit when you're with a person in a friendship or a business partnership or a relationship or whatever it is. Any kind of association or connection, you're looking at the fruit from it. You know, is there fruit, or is it a waste of time? Okay, how would you define the fruit that comes from it, like specifically? You know, and is it good fruit or bad fruit? Why? Okay. Essentially, you know, if you think about deception meaning theft, the ultimate goal is to steal your purpose, not only from you, but if you're a spiritual person, you believe in, you know, a higher power, it's theft from the higher power, see? You have to expand this and see that if we truly are vessels, then it's theft on that level, see? So that's why, you know, I know that when we are in the midst of trying times that challenge our very core of ourself, I don't even know how to put it, but like really intense, hard times, I know that it's so personal. And I'm not saying that these times are not personal, but for me, I can speak from experience that when I have been able to zoom out and expand and see everything from this elevated position, through the lens of spirituality and you know, roping in, you know, where does God and the bigger picture fit in here? When I see that what's going down is not only personal, but it's more than that, you know, it's affecting the greater good and even God's plans, you know, to use me for good in my own life and for my family and friends and the community and further on. When you see this, then it's kind of like there's a relief, because in seeing all that's affected, you realize you're not battling it alone. Okay? So it's kind of like, that's how, without putting all this into words as you're experiencing these things, because you don't have the words for them in the midst of the experience, it's kind of like you just come into the understanding that there is a spiritual dimension. For a lot of us, that's what happens. We're just like, man, there's definitely more. And, you know, there may be very specific experiences we have during this time too that, you know, where things are revealed to us, you know, in a very personal way. But you come into this understanding that there's more than what meets the eye to our reality, more than this physical material dimension. And but to me, it's been helpful to take some time, you know, in my current position, being able to reflect back, because you can't really reflect back when you're still caught up in emotions. You're not thinking straight. You're just, all that does is perpetuate those bad emotions. You have to work through your emotions first. That's the first step. And then once you get past that, then you can get to a place where you can think clearly, because you know, you can withstand looking back at all this hard stuff, and then you're able to make sense of it, right? And so I'm going back and you know, literally adding logic to these experiences, you know, down to the detail of breaking my language down has been very helpful to me, which is why I do what I do. This is why I share the things I do with you all, right? But if we're not bearing fruit, that's, that's kind of a big deal, okay? So, yes. So if you're wondering why, sometimes we can get stuck in a poor me or a pity me mindset, right? A victimhood mindset. And a lot of people stay there forever and ever. And sometimes we really are a victim of our circumstances, or, a person with bad intentions or whatever. But to just be conditioned into that kind of mindset, it keeps the good fruit out of reach, unfortunately. And so it's kind of like, you might say, your blessings are held back, right? So now to look at the Bible verse, which I mention a lot, which is, God uses all things for the good of those who love him. I do believe that during these bad times, there is still some good happening behind the scenes. And you can just simply sum that up by saying that, we are being changed during this time. We just don't realize it. It's a refinement process, right? And which aligns with, the Bible talking about putting off the old man and being reborn. It's a laying down of your old life. Your old way of life and everything associated with it. That process is hard, and it's not just a quick, just a lightning bolt, one and done, and you turn the page and that's it. It's not like that. It's a gradual process. And so if you think about the gradual process of, just say, since we've been talking about fruit, like sitting like a banana or any kind of fruit on your kitchen counter and just leaving it alone and letting it rot and decay, it's a slow process. See, the dying off of our old life, I have experienced it as a slow process. And so it's painful, and it's confusing, and you're changing, and so when we start to add judgment to ourselves, like, why don't I feel like doing what I used to do? Why don't I want to sit down and paint? Why don't I want to, why am I not motivated to keep writing, or whatever it is that you used to do? If you lose that motivation, if you just add blame onto yourself, it's not productive. That right there is not producing fruit. So it's just one small example of, is this fruitful? Is this approach I'm taking mentally to whatever in my life, is this fruitful? If it's not, stop it. It's not that's not even easy either. You have to be disciplined, but it's a process. It's a process, okay? So during this time, during this transition phase, when we're putting off the old man or woman, it's the hopeful view, and you may get glimpses of this during the process, right? But for me, it certainly wasn't forefront of my mind, unfortunately. But I think that we are all given glimpses, which kind of like helps. It's like these beautiful numinous breadcrumbs that strings us along for good, for a good purpose, to string us along. It's like these little glimpses of hope that we are actually, or what's happening to us is actually making room for the new. So, we know that faith without works is dead. When we keep that in our mind, we can start to understand why our dreams are not getting any traction if there's nothing happening, if there's this stagnation that we're stuck in, okay? Essentially, what happens with people that are exploiting us in some way, they have intercepted this life-death-life cycle, okay? And so when we become aware enough of kind of like something's wrong here, okay, when we become aware enough and strong enough to resume this life-death-life cycle, what we awaken to within the cycle is the fact that to get it going again, to get out of that stagnation, it means that we have to see that we're actually in the midst of the death part of the cycle. And that's not easy. We have to be able to see it, to participate, and to start engaging consciously with our own free will in the works to make the faith active, to bring about the new. Okay, so that's necessary. And not only do we have to be able to see that we are in the midst of the death part of it, and we have to actively engage in it. That's what we have to do. We have to actively engage in it and execute it and make some hard decisions. You see what I'm saying? We have to jump right in, write it out. All this has to happen to restart or reboot that life force energy, the cycle, okay, for the new to come around. And it's unknown. It's certainly what's called a leap of faith. It's stepping out on faith. It's surrender, right? Why is it hard? Because it feels like gambling. I've never been into that, but I have been to Vegas once, and that, it's like, it's tough. It goes back to I'm thinking of all kind of sayings. I'm thinking of, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. That's kind of like we want to cling. We want to be like, well, I know what's going on here. I'm not super happy, but I don't know what in the world could possibly, my future, what could it could possibly be like if I just let go and jump into the unknown, right? It's kind of like, well, it's comfortable here, right? But I want you to keep in mind that phrase that I opened the video with, which is, if you love something, set it free. If it comes back to you, then it's yours. And if it doesn't, it never was. Okay. So, again, the old has to pass away for the new to be born or to come to fruition. Now, speaking of putting off the old man, so let's check this out. We're going to examine the words freedom and bondage here to get some more insight, okay? And the context with regards to these terms matters here, okay? So freedom is the power of self-determination or the state of free will or law of free will. Now, to look at free with regards to freedom, free is an adjective, right? And you have the Proto-Germanic friaz, F-R-I-A-Z. I say it sounds like free as a bird, I'm thinking of a song, but anyway, friaz is an actual word, F-R-I-A-Z. It means beloved and also not in bondage. Isn't that cool? I thought that was kind of cool. And then you have the Proto-Indo-European root, which is priya, P-R-I-Y-A, which means dear, beloved, and to love. So we see this close association with love and freedom, right? Okay. So then you take the latter half of the word, which is dumb, freedom, okay, D-O-M. Which is an abstract suffix of state, okay? So you have the Old English D-O-M, which means a statute or judgment. And you have the German suffix it's related to, which is T-U-M, right? Dash T-U-M, which means jurisdiction, province, state, condition, quality. And this is all related to doom, D-O-O-M, right? Which is Old English. You have the D-O-O-M-E, which means a law or a judgment or decree, okay? Now, on one hand, you have, well, this makes sense. Freedom is the state of, or the law of, the judgment of, this identifiable, legit thing of being free, but free is associated with being beloved, right? And not in bondage. But then you have doom with regards to how we perceive that word today, and I think that's relevant too. Something for you to explore further if you have interest. But it's kind of like the law of free will. We are gifted with that. It is a gift. It didn't have to be that way, but it is that way. And so if you think about God's love for us, you know that God is love. He loves us so much. He's so full of love. He is love. He's synonymous with love, right? So he wants us to be free, right? But there's this tie or connection to it being a law or a state or condition of, okay? So when you operate from a place of truly of freedom, self-determination, little s, self, then you're under this jurisdiction or a jurisdiction. See what I'm saying? There's still consequence. There's still results that come about because of the law of cause and effect when you act from this place of self-determination. You follow me? So then we have, this is really interesting too. I mentioned DOM. You know, if you expand on it down in online on this webpage, it says, you know, it's related to discernment too and distinction, but ultimately it's related to law and jurisdiction and decree and all this. Okay, so then we have bondage, which is a noun, and it equates to a legal condition of a serf or slave, also related to the Old English housekeeper, which is interesting. I'm reminded of in the Bible where it talks about, you know, my Father's house has many rooms, you know, and you can just explore that further if you have interest. I want to try to be cognizant of time here. But let me just share this with you. Galatians chapter 5 verse 1 says, "For freedom Christ has set us free. Stand firm, therefore, and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery." So we are meant to be free, okay? Which makes sense because when we were under the, you know, the spell of the control of this manipulative force in our life, okay, it truly did feel like we were just existing, didn't it? So if there's a silver lining to the time or the, you know, the many years, months, whatever it was that we were ensnared by deception, it's this. Let me share this with you. The Proto-Indo-European root of bondage is B-H-E-U-E, which means to be or to exist, right? Because we felt like we were just existing, which we were when we were in bondage psychologically, okay? But check this out. The meaning of B-H-E-U-E, okay? To be, exist, and also, and I would say most importantly, to grow. So while we felt stagnant, there was something happening. There was a transformation happening. Just like that rotting fruit, that it's useless during a time, okay? Per our perception, our ability to see. And yet, if you put it under a microscope, you're going to see the life that is hard at work, you know, microscopically on this fruit to transform it, right? Because even during that time, it's feeding. It's becoming something else. It's adding to another part of life. And so we are being transformed during that time, and to experience it, to read about these concepts is one thing, to actually experience them is another. And I have come into the understanding that, you know, to act per the little s, self-determination or free will, can in itself be a snare, because there is in fact jurisdiction, law, decree related to that. But if you want to be free, then to look at bondage as not a bad thing, but a choice, as a commitment to bond, right? Because think about in relationships, you don't want to get in a relationship with someone who doesn't have the ability to bond with you, do you? Right? You've probably already experienced that, and you can't make it happen. If they don't have that capacity, they don't have that capacity. So to bond, see, well, that's a good thing. So to willingly, to be set free, remember, if you love something, if God loves us, which he does, and he does set us free, he gives us this option. If it comes back, right, then it is yours. In other words, we have the choice to come back and become his, right? And we also have the choice not to, right? And it says, you know, if it comes back to you, it is yours. If it doesn't, it never was. And then we have the verse that says, you know, in the end, if we didn't develop this relationship with God, right, through Christ, if you're a Christian, you're using that lens, we have this verse that says, if we didn't develop this relationship during our earthly time here, then we will be rejected. And God will say, depart from me, I never knew you. So there's this option to surrender in that way. And the irony is, when you do, you are no longer bound by the doom part of law. See, that's the irony, which equates to true freedom. So that's the beauty of that. And it was something that has been on my heart for some time, and it's kind of been cooking in the back here. And I like to do that. I like to marinate on things for a while, and I feel like if I did it longer, I could probably bring more to the topic and share that with you all. But it felt like the right time to go ahead and share that with you all. And I hope that it's gotten the wheels turning, which is always my goal, despite, you know, whatever your beliefs are and where you are on your walk and your journey. I just hope that it's gotten it brought you some insights, and it got you to thinking, and inspired you and encouraged you. And so I hope that has taken place for you. And I thank you so much for coming along to hear the message. I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.